Ports face total shutdown nationwide. See page 5.
She overwhelmed by security challenges.
Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard. Here on Today in the News,
we read and give in-depth analysis on some of the stories on the front pages of the paper.
Also take your insightful comments of what's going on here in Nigeria and across the world. Join us Mondays through to Friday
on Vanguard Live. Good morning and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damilola Okunshakin, and here on Today in the News we read and give in-depth analysis on some of the stories making waves across Nigeria. And right now we'll be starting with the front page of Vanguard for paper review. And here we have Katsina abduction, kidnappers in talks through Miyetti Allah, and that's coming from Missouri. Boko Haram used local gangs to kidnap students. And also school until our children return home. Federal government hasn't learned from previous kidnaps. That's coming from the Christian Association of Nigeria. A coalition of northern groups moves to Katsina. No sleep until students are rescued. Buhari safe in Katsina, and that's coming from DHQ. And you can see that story on page 5. Also on the photo story here we have a photograph of students who escaped from the bandits den. Also here we have an empty dormitory full of wares of schoolboys as a scene after a gunman abducted hundreds of students at the government senior science school, secondary school in Kankara, Katsina State. Now moving on to other stories on page 9. Here we have a money laundering charge. Appeal court nullifies conviction, others a fresh trial. Additional Seru allowed Buhari at 78. You can see that on page 24. Also on page 6, we have a panic as fuel pipeline burst along Lagos Ibadan Expressway. Autumn asks Benue youths to defend self as a gunman kill lawyer, wife in Makurdi. You can see that story on page 14. Now to the stories above the nameplate. On page 11, we have a COVID-19 vaccine arrives in Nigeria January, and that's coming from the federal government. Also, Buhari orders reopening of Seme, Megatari, Ilela, and Mufun borders. You can see that on page 11, and of course, some will agree that it's a good news, while others are against that idea. But going on page 9, we have insecurity. Representative order NCC to extend SIM registration deadline by 10 weeks. And lastly, on the front page of Vanguard, we have ease of doing business. Federal government targets a top 70 world ranking by 2023. And you can see that story on page 19. And away from Vanguard, we move straight to the Punch newspaper. And on the front page of the Punch newspaper, I have reopening of 4 borders. LCCI experts raise a smuggling alert as federal government retains a rice ban. And the rider says other land borders to be reopened on or before December 31st, says a minister. Government field closure didn't stop smuggling. That's coming from Abuja Chamber of Commerce. Inconsistent government policies jeopardizing investment, says DG and NACC. And you can see that story on page 2. Now moving on to other stories here on page 8, we have immigration denies a Quechua passport renewal over after NSAS protest. Chinese laborer killed in Oshun mining site ownership and fight. You can see that on page 11. Now lastly, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, we have who expects COVID-19 vaccine by January, and that's coming from the minister. You can see that story on page 8. And from the Punch newspaper, I go straight to the Nation. And on the front page of the Nation, I have military to rescue abducted pupils, whichever way. Government, we are negotiating through Miyetti Allah. Inspector General deploys special squad. You can see that story on the front page, and it continues on page 3. Now, other stories here, we have boom back at border communities right now, and rice, poultry products importation remain banned. You can see that on page 3. And moving on to page 4, we have it's time to review revenue formula and police structure. Governors Tinubu at Ajimobi lecture. And here on page 2, we have Minister COVID-19 vaccine likely for Nigeria January. Appeal court orders matters release and retrial. And that's all on the front page on The Nation. I'll be going on a short break now, and when I come back, I have 2 guests who will be joining me to analyze the front pages of the papers. Stay with us, we'll be back.
Ports face total shutdown nationwide. See page 5.
She overwhelmed by security challenges.
Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard. Here on Today in the News,
we read and give in-depth analysis on some of the stories on the front pages of the paper.
Also take your insightful comments of what's going on here in Nigeria and across the world. Join us Mondays through to Friday
on Vanguard Live. Alright, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damilola Ogunchaki, and we have reviewed the front pages of the papers, and this is the analysis segment where we're joined by 2 guests. But right now we are trying to get into our second guest. But here with me is Mr. Dayo Akintobi, the publisher of Ibibudu Today. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Damilola.
Thank you for coming to our show once again. Okay, so let's discuss what's on the front pages of the papers. And it seems this morning, mostly on the front pages, what we're just seeing is just some of the attack news and some stories that people really don't want to see. And it seems it's now becoming so common here in Nigeria. But let's talk about that, of the kidnap of the schoolboys in Kankara. And the Katsina State Governor, as Aminu Bello Masari said, his administration is in discussion with the suspected abductors of those students through the Miyetti Allah Breeders Association of Nigeria. Now my question is, negotiating with kidnappers and also doing this with through Miyetti Allah Breeders Association of Nigeria, what do you think about this?
Well, at this point, I guess we are desperate enough that we are willing to do just about anything to get the boys back. We still have the nightmarish recollection of the Chibok girls since 2014, 2015 that has not been resolved till today. And of course, there's a security truism that says you don't negotiate with terrorists. That's a standard policy. But exceptions have to be made. Exceptions have to be made to this rule from time when exigent circumstances call for it. In this case, I mean, it's unconscionable to use children as a pawn in a terrorist scheme, but that adds to the desperation to resolve the issue because children are innocent, they're vulnerable, they can be easily overwhelmed, they can't defend themselves, they can't fend for themselves. So it makes it all more critical. So if they're saying, well, we're negotiating, I'm just thankful that at least there's a body in the middle that can act as an intercessor. Although my cynical mind says that means Miyetti Allah knows who the terrorists are, where they are, how to communicate with them. So why can't Miyetti Allah work with the government to try and overcome or give them the kind of intelligence that will enable the government to be able to apprehend these people and bring them to justice? It's good that they're helping us to negotiate, but they should take it one step further and provide the government with the kind of intelligence that will help government to be able to arrest this problem once and for all.
Okay, the Commissioner of Police assured the student body that they are doing everything they can to return the students safely. But now, looking back to that of Chibok girls and Dapchi girls, especially Sheribu and all that, it seems we heard these same statements then. I know there's still a lot of assaults on the innocent citizens, debilitating attacks and all that now. And hearing this statement now from them, do you think Nigerians will be able to believe this, or do you think they've convinced Nigerians enough that they can do something different this time around?
It sounds like an empty promise, really. It's just a hollow, it gives no reassurance at all, because when you look at the antecedents, you look at the things that have happened before, every time something like this happens, they say the same thing. So we will leave no stone unturned. That has become such a cliche now. We will leave no stone unturned to get to the bottom of this, to apprehend the people who did this. But at the end of the day, they never do. So it's not comforting. Those words are not comforting. They don't give the kind of confidence, they don't inspire the kind of confidence that government will resolve this on its own merits.
Okay, Governor Siri said, he explained that some of these terrorists, some of the kidnappers are actually in contact with the terrorists. I mean, it's like we're trying to battle two different groups, and it seems they are trying to work together now. These people working together, what harm will it cause to the society?
Well, in this particular situation, what we're hearing is that Boko Haram contracted some local bandits to do the kidnapping job for them, and then they paid them to collect the boys after the local bandits had done the job. So now all of a sudden you are absolutely right. We have two different forces we're contending with. We're contending with Boko Haram, Shekau, and terrorists on the one hand. We're now contending also with local bandits on the other hand, who know the terrain, know the people, are known to the local people, so there's a false sense of security when they're around. So it makes it much easier for them to perpetrate nefarious activity than Boko Haram coming from outside into a local community to do it. So all of a sudden this has opened a new avenue of insecurity, because we're now dealing with multiple, a hydra-headed monster that can approach from different angles.
Okay, so still we are talking about these characters, and a new information came in, and that's what people have been asking for. That's the border. Borders are, they've ordered that the borders should be open according to the president, and Nigerians are worried now that, of course, food prices will actually it will reduce. People will be able to get what they want, and but the question is it the right time to open the border? I mean, the border has been closed for over 5 months now, and it's just 5 days after, and the borders have been opened. What do you think about it?
Well, let's ask ourselves first. Let's go back and ask ourselves, why were the borders closed to begin with? The ostensible reason given by the presidency was twofold. Number one, they wanted to combat smuggling. There was a lot of smuggling issues that the customs had been unable to control or arrest. And the second reason was because they wanted to protect local production. They wanted to boost local production of rice, local production of... It was a protectionist move to protect local agricultural production. At the time the borders were closed, it had little or nothing to do with insecurity whatsoever. So there are two separate issues. Of course, now, at this point where we believe that a lot of the terrorism in this country is coming from countries outside our borders, Niger, Mali, that a lot of people are crossing the borders, it might look like it's a wrong move at this time, that there's a lot of insecurity. But if we look at the main purpose for for closing the borders to begin with, I think government has either achieved its objective or recognizes that that move is not effective in achieving its objective. I really don't think it has stopped smuggling at all.
Yeah.
I think what it just did was cause inflation, cause food prices to hike. I also think it was that the government reneged on its agreement with ECOWAS countries, which creates open borders for trade and for movement of people with other West African countries, and I don't think that made us very acceptable in the sight of our neighbors. So I think the opening of the borders simply says that we need to intensify efforts both in terms of the customs to make sure that, because even with the borders being reopened, they've still banned rice, they've still banned poultry, there's still certain commodities that are not allowed in. But what it means is that customs has to step up its game at policing the borders. What it also means is that the army and the police also have to step up their efforts in policing the northern borders to make sure that criminals, terrorists, bandits are not infiltrating from our northern neighbors. We already have enough issues with homegrown terrorism. We definitely don't need any coming across the borders.
Okay, talking about the northern borders being opened now, the boys have been kidnapped, and Nigerians are really sure that with the borders being opened right now, the boys will be able to transport those boys outside the country via the borders, because some believe that they are still in Nigeria because there's no way they'll be able to take them outside, and their worries is that these students that they've taken outside will actually be trained to be suicide bombers or some other sorts, to participate in some other sorts of criminal activities now opening these borders this time around in terms of insecurity right now. Do you think it's right?
I don't think even if the borders were closed, it would have stopped the boys being taken across the border if that was the intent of the terrorists. Whether the borders are closed or the borders are open, the borders are porous. You can't police every single square inch of the border. And these terrorists know the bushes, they know the forest, they know the bush paths, they know how to move. So I don't really think that reopening the borders has any relationship to whether the boys will be taken out or kept. If the borders were closed and the terrorists intended to take them out, they would take them out. Look at the ease with which they were moved out inside our own country. And they were moved from the school to the bushes, from one state to the next state, within our own borders, and they did it freely without any apprehension. So you can imagine crossing the border is not a big deal at all. So I don't think there's any relationship between the two in terms of whether the boys will be kept here. What we need to investigate further is what is the main objective of the terrorists in taking these boys? Do they want ransom? Is it money motivated? Do they want to recruit a young up and coming army that can be trained or indoctrinated to become crusaders or fighters for their cause? Is that the purpose? Is it that they are still young enough that their minds can be brainwashed to make them buy into this agenda whereby they now start fighting for this cause? Is that the purpose of their kidnap? That's what Miyetti Allah should begin to try to find out in their negotiations, is what was the objective of taking these boys to begin with. Once we understand that, then we can better begin to understand the mindset of the kidnappers and what their possible next steps may be in terms of these boys. I don't really think taking the boys across the border may really be a primary objective at this point.
Okay, you talked about the children being moved from one state to another. Via various means, maybe the bushes and all that now. And definitely within hours, we have security officials out, and I'm sure they could not move them out there during the safety. And then being successful moving them from one state to another. Does it not say something about our security in Nigeria, security officials?
Absolutely, yes, it did. The ease with which this was done, because just the logistical challenges of moving 300 human beings from even just out of their school into the local community to chaperone 300 individuals, especially rambunctious, active young children, even if they're scared, the point is to keep them in order and to move them from one place to the next is an onerous task. But the ease with which it was done, I heard that they took them on motorcycles. So even if you put 3 on motorcycles, you need 100 motorcycles to move these people. And they did it without fear, without apprehension, without anybody being able to arrest the situation. So insecurity has completely broken down. Mostly, primarily in the northern part of Nigeria. For this kind of thing to have been able to happen and happen completely unanswered tells us that at this point in time there's no security in the country, and each of us just has to basically look out for ourselves and make sure we keep ourselves safe.
Do you think rebuilding the security architecture right now will help?
Anything at this point in time is necessary. I think we've belabored the point about the security chiefs being changed. I think we've talked so much about technology. We've talked about we've even talked about asking for foreign help if that's what it takes. I know there's national pride. I know there's issues of we're the giant of Africa, But if what it takes is to ask for foreign assistance by way of expertise, by way of personnel, by way of equipment, if that's what it would take at this point, all options should be on the table, because this thing has overcome it has overcome all solutions. It's defied every possible solution that has been thrown at it, and it continues to grow and get bigger. So we need to come up with creative new ways. It could be changing the service chiefs, which I think is overdue. It could be, like I said, asking for foreign help. It could be deployment of technology. It could be even extending local vigilante assistance like Amotekun and all these other type of local vigilante groups. It could be empowering them more, expanding their theaters of operation, things like that. But definitely we need to do something.
Okay, and let's go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about Amotekun that you just mentioned.
Face total shutdown nationwide. See page 5.
Chief overwhelmed by security challenges.
Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard. Here on Today in the News, we
read and give in-depth analysis on some of the stories on the front pages of the paper.
Also take your insightful comments of what's going on here in Nigeria and across the world. Join us Mondays through to Friday
on Vanguard Live. Alright, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damlola Ogunshaki, and we've been analyzing some of the stories on the front pages. And I've not been doing this alone. I've been doing it with my guest in the studio, and he's in the person of Mr. Dayo Akintobi, the publisher of ABDUCTED Today. Thank you very much again.
Pleasure is all mine.
Okay, so we talked about insecurity, and before we went to the break, you talked about Amotekun and some other security agencies. Now, talking about Amotekun, we've had many people coming out to say that Amotekun, they are not really seeing their effects there in Southwest. Now, I want to ask you, do you really think that they are doing better than what they are doing? Because talking about some people's persons, they said it's because the governors are not really helping them, and they're really looking down on their abilities. Now, I want to get your opinion on the Amotekun issue. Do you think they are successful for the reasons that they've been brought to us?
That situation is a bit disheartening, because the intention behind Amotekun is honorable, but it seems its implementation and its rollout has been sort of truncated a bit due to various competing interest. My understanding is that the local groups that are supposed to supply personnel to become Amotekun officers, that those people are asking the governors for all kinds of financial remuneration, and that was what has delayed the rollout of Amotekun. The truth of the matter is, only 2 states have really launched Amotekun, and even those 2 states haven't recruited to the strength or full complement of officers that they need to, because the various local vigilante groups that are supposed to supply them people are kind of wanting some sort of personal benefit, and so that has delayed or slowed down the rollout of Amotekun in all 6 southern states. But once they resolve the contending issues and it is able to roll out fully with a full complement of officers, equipment supplied by the governors, salaries of the people paid, I think its role to complement the police. I mean, we read in the papers reports of Amotekun arresting 100 people in Ondo yesterday. You can see where they can be effective. We are seeing little bits of initiative and efforts on their part. So once they roll out fully, I think their effect will be better felt.
Okay, still talking about how we can help curb insecurities in Nigeria. It seems that MCC, that's a Nigeria Communications Commission, they've ordered that all SIM cards be registered, with NINs and all that. Do you think this will help, seeing that the border closure didn't really assist in curbing insecurity issues? Do you think this will assist?
The idea of the national identification number is so that we know who we are, we know where we are, we know what we are doing. It's a very good initiative.
Yes.
To have that NIN and have it linked to everything, linked to your BVN, your driver's license, your passport. I just renewed my passport last week, and without my NIN, I couldn't do it. The NIN number is actually printed on the data page of my passport. I understand that even driver's licenses now, you can't get them without your NIN. So the purpose of putting the NIN on your SIM card, tying it to your SIM card, is so that the national database knows who you are, knows who is using that phone number. So it'll help in terms of addressing issues of terrorism, because even to make a call for ransom, we already know whose phone is making the call, where that person is, and how to track that person. The problem with the NCC directive is that the period of time given for implementation of tying your NIN to your SIM card, that period is too short. Initially they said 10 days. The House of Reps is now asking for a 6-week extension. Right. I mean, there's no common sense in asking 160 million phone lines to be registered with NIN in 10 days. It doesn't work, especially at a time like this where we're doing social distancing from COVID-19. Are we also supposed to jam 10,000 people inside a network office for them to be able to register their NIN numbers? That, of course, has its own health implications separately. But by and large, I do agree with the notion of a national identity number for every Nigerian, so we know. Also, it helps with planning, it helps with budgeting, it helps to know resource control, distribution of resources, how many people are in each state. We really don't know who we are, how many we are, where we live, what we do. Once government has that information at its fingertips, it helps it to plan better, not just in terms of security, but in terms of even the economy as well.
Okay, you talked about COVID itself, and it seems we really recorded the highest case yesterday, seeing that since the second wave started, and it seems this second wave now it's really coming worse than the first wave right now. So it seems people are really disregarding the laws, and they're not even bothered about COVID itself. So right now they're saying the vaccine will arrive in January to Nigeria by January right now. So this vaccine coming, and is it like a hope for Nigerians, and is it like telling Nigerians that they should calm down even with this, that the vaccine will arrive?
The thing about vaccination generally is that it's preventative.
Yes.
That's the idea, and that's why the whole world has been awaiting its arrival, because theoretically, once you get the vaccination, you are immune. You become immune from catching the disease. The problem now is that we have no immunity at this point in time, and as a result, this second wave that's coming, you can see it's more virulent than the first one.
Yes.
Yesterday we recorded the highest total ever, 930 new infections. Now, part of the reason for that is the way we live. most people have abandoned all COVID safety precautions, the notion of face masks. Matter of fact, if you go out now wearing a face mask, people look at you like you're from outer space. Like, what's wrong with this one? You know? So, hand sanitizing, checking your temperature, social distancing, all those things we've jettisoned and thrown out of the window because we were lucky and we dodged a bullet with the first wave. Truth be told, 60,000 infections on the first wave is an infinitesimal proportion of our 200 million population. So most people didn't take COVID very seriously. And I pray that with this coming of this second wave, as lackadaisical as we are about following the safety protocols, I pray that we're not in for a rough ride with this one.
Okay, so still, talking about this, I would like to get your opinion on what, the Femi Adesina, the special advisor to President Muhammad, said. I think I will need to quote him. It says, if more Nigerians knew the president, if they knew the essential Buhari, that's the quintessential patriots and gentleman, they would behave differently and do him with more care and show him kindness. And is a man of personal discipline, single-minded about the infrastructural development of the country, and he is succeeding at it. Now we've seen many people reacting on social media, but I would like to get your own reaction to these statements by Femi Adesina.
The proof of the pudding is in the eating. It's when we see the tangible results. For him to say he's succeeding, the man in the street doesn't see that, because at this point in time there's poverty, there's insecurity, there are all these negative indices about our quality of life. So for him to say he's concerned about infrastructural development of Nigeria and he's succeeding at it, I don't think the common man would agree with that. In terms of his personal attributes, he's a man of integrity, he's a man that the average Nigerian doesn't know him well, is why he's being vilified all over the place. Where I blame his image makers, including Femi Adesina, that they've not portrayed him for the way they know him. I don't know him, you don't know him, but Femi Adesina knows him. So for Femi Adesina to be saying that he wishes Nigerians knew him better, it means Femi Adesina has failed at his job, because he's the image maker. He is the image maker for the government, who is supposed to tell us or supposed to continually reinforce to us the type of person the president is and why we should see him as a person of this and this character. So the president's public persona, his public perception, which he rode on that wave of goodwill into office, definitely his public perception is that he's a principled person, he's a man of integrity, he's disciplined, he's no nonsense, I don't know about the kind part, but all those attributes have not coalesced into tangible benefits for you and me in terms of our daily lives. So there's a disconnect for me from what Femi Adesina is saying to what to where the shoe is pinching me, to what I am feeling. The two don't correlate at all.
Okay, thank you very much, for really joining us this morning. But before you go, I would like to get your opinion on this, based on you saying that what is really pinching us and pinching Nigerians, and that's based on what our Mr. and Mrs. are saying. And let me first start with Mrs. She says, I've already invited my aunt and our 4 sons over for Christmas. The COVID-19 excuse will not fly. Why don't you just accept that you are stingy? She's talking to Mr. And Mr. replies, look, at a time like this, people will not open their doors even to Santa Claus. So of course this is saying a lot indirectly. Now I would like you to react to this.
Well, we know that the notion of Santa Claus is that of gift giving, festive season. So if they're saying that Santa Claus even coming this year, we won't open the doors, because he's not coming to carry gifts to you, he's coming to come and collect his own rice from you, if at all he can. So we won't even open. So the notion is that the idea of even gift giving is reversed this year, because nobody has anything to give, rather we are all asking for and hoping to receive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, the publisher of the Look Beju today. Thanks for joining me and sharing your thoughts with us.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and that's all we have for you on Today in the News. You can always like and follow us on our social media platforms that are showing on your screen, or visit our website www.vanguardngr.com to get more of our top stories. We have more shows coming up, so make sure you tune in, be with your phone or your gadgets to get more of our news and things that we have to bring to you. But from Today in the News, is bye from me, Damlola Ogunshaki.
Courts face total shutdown nationwide. See page 5.
She overwhelmed by security challenges.
Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard. Here on Today in the News,
We read and give in-depth analysis on some of the stories on the front pages of the paper.
also take your insightful comments of what's going on here in Nigeria and across the world. Join us Mondays through to Friday
On Vanguard Live.